Hello, welcome back to another episode of Detection at Scale. Today, I'm here with Andrew Casazza from Ochsner Health. He is the Assistant Vice President of Cybersecurity Operations. Andrew, how are you doing?
Good, Jack. Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about where you're working on at Ochsner and what's exciting for you right now.
Yeah, kind of the big things, doing a massive migration from different MDR services, doing a new uplift into both our XOR kind of integration SOAR operations that are there, doing a migration of SOC services and SIM services as well too. So really trying to bring the architecture of a hospital organization up to kind of the new standards and kind of some of the new tech that's involved in the industry now.
I guess talk a little bit about the industry side of things. So what does Ochsner Health do? What are the security challenges in operating in that environment? Like set the stage a little for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Healthcare is a challenging environment. I think, from a perspective, I didn't originally start in a healthcare environment. I started in military contracting, moved into kind of commercialized cyber, and then now over at Ochsner Health. Some of the main concerns is you have so many overarching regulations. You have FDA medically approved devices, patient care. You have things that, you have MRI machines that you spend $1 million on, but they were built and designed around Windows 7 and they're still operating in your current tech stack. So you have to try and learn to scope around them because you can't just replace it. Some of these machines, the complexity, the software that's associated with them. So you have to architect around the security vulnerabilities, knowing that a lot of times you have software that's end of life, you have systems that you can't put monitoring and detection tools on because they're specifically medical devices. So from a challenge standpoint, it's really looking at the healthcare industry and seeing the ship as it's, to put it, it's a slow moving ship to get it in the right direction where, a commercial world, it's easy to upgrade. It's easy to replace, network components, security tools. You can rip and replace to your heart's content. But once you start circling around, IoT medical devices, it becomes a challenge because everything has to get either pre-certified or you have to look into security exemptions for some of the processes and the tools. So it just makes things go a little bit slower. And from an unfortunate side, it's definitely made the security of the United States healthcare significantly lagged behind. It's not just even simple things like a Windows 10 patch or Windows 11 patch update can't go out to every system. It can't go out to just blindly go out. You usually have to stay quite a few revisions behind if you're even able to get it up there for the stability of operations, which it makes sense, but it does pose a unique challenge to people like us that are trying to prevent attacks, disruptions. Ransomware is a big one in the healthcare field. We see those across the US all the time because they're quick paydays, because everybody just knows they're going to spin up, get their healthcare system back up as fast as possible. So they're going to pay. It does pose a unique challenge. And then just the size too. Ochsner is a very large healthcare organization based out of Louisiana, but they're spread everywhere from Texas through Mississippi all the way out to Florida. It's still growing. So with that, you also come the inherited M&A activities, which brings in, the tech debt, the legacy debt that comes in from all these other hospitals and systems that you connect with, providers, offices, small locations that maybe were independent a few years ago, but now are now under the umbrella and the purview of Ochsner. There's definitely tech challenges that come with that. And then to bring them up to speed, like anything else, now it's more money because they're so far behind in the years of refreshes and updates that it's just that ever perpetual cycle of trying to meet the industry, but also trying to meet, the other industry, the FDA and the healthcare, and try to find that commonality between them.
What's the strategy? I mean, I assume there's probably insertion points maybe around devices that might be old, or like how do you think about securing things from a monitoring controls perspective when they are so legacy or they have so many limitations?
Yeah, it's some of the very first things that we've taken the approach to is you got to start watching everything. Just even understanding, cataloging what's out there, and then just monitoring it. Just being able to determine, okay, is this communicating upon a baseline that we would expect? Is this accurately talking out to, okay, we know it's supposed to go to this domain and it's only going to this domain, but now we're seeing it talking to some random IP address, and just being able to understand that. And then that starts working into the next layers of, okay, well, now we could start looking into some automated detection tools to say, okay, hey, how can we apply in our tool sets and into our SIM and into some of our tech stack there? When is it going outside of norms? When is it doing something different? When is it, can we really tighten down the firewalls around it so only a specific type of traffic is going there? Another common way is, can we throw it on separate VLANs? Can we get it isolated where it's still can communicate, and if something does happen, it's pretty self-contained and doesn't do much. But it's definitely it's the old adage of how do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time. We just got to pick and choose those one. What's the very first thing that we ever want, and that's just to be able to see. And then once we can see, we can start to really narrow and focus down and get there. And leveraging a lot of the newer tools, which have a lot of automations and built-in threat profiles, built-in integrations with threat mappings, that really helps us start to really target down on areas that may be more concerning, or areas where we just say, hey, if they get in, they turn a printer off. And what's your care at that point? You still care, but significantly less.
So the fact that you have a lot of limitations around what software you're able to run and trying to manage all these different legacy systems, the question in my head is how much are you able to take advantage of new things like AI, right? Like, is that in the cards right now? You're talking about that.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge, but it's at least the beauty of this is it's so everybody knows about AI now. Everybody knows about Chat GPT, or going on to Google Gemini and asking questions. So you start to get even the senior leaders in the company that are like, hey, I love AI. How can we get that into the company? How can we do things with it? So from our perspective, we can kind of leverage it a little bit and say, hey, we have some great security AI tools that are able to come in, some of it really trying to take advantage of just looking at logs, looking at traffic profiles and identity, and trying to see if we can get AI to do that. There's always the concern, you have HIPAA regulations, PII regulations, PCI compliance for payments that are concerned. So we have, the additional regulations that come to bear. But there's definitely, from our perspective, especially with some of the tools that are all tools that we basically are starting to see now, they're all coming out with their own version of AI. They're all trying to tell you, hey, this is the best. And for us, it's if it's already in our tech stack, we get to play around with it, we get to bring it in. But we definitely, try to bring it up to our leaders to say, hey, you like AI, we like AI, we want to try and incorporate it. And this is the benefits that we can get. We can get you cost reduction in personnel, because now we can get 24/7 monitoring of the tools without needing an overnight SOC. We can get you threat hunting and all that activity without having to go buy a threat hunter or bring a threat hunting team in to do things. We can get almost instant recognition of events when they happen, versus an alert comes in, somebody takes 15, 20 minutes to look at the alert, start to make an understanding of what's come across. You can have that AI really, jump in and grasp on it and start to make that determination almost instantly. And then giving your end users, my L3 team, to the time and the space to, one, get a foothold of what's going on. And a lot of times too, with these AIs, they're starting to give you the readouts of the humanistic read. So when you see those random PowerShell scripts, or you see some of these random connections, it can actually put a concept or an idea of what's going on to it. So somebody who's just jumping into the case doesn't have to spend a half hour deciphering it before they even can start doing things. They can start seeing the bad right away. So from a perspective of the good, I'm a huge fan of AI, and I would love to, incorporate it more for a lot of, the L1s, the L2s, from a SOC perspective, really trying to hammer out a lot of the mundane work of exactly, what I was just saying, finding out the fact findings, putting that into the ticket, getting everything written out in a humanistic language form. So then that way, when the real work happens and you actually have to start doing the more further investigation, you're already 5 steps ahead of where you would have been, 2 years ago, by manually looking everything up, typing it out, putting it into a case file, and going forth. So it's a lot of potential and a lot of concern and scariness at the same time too, with AI and just where it can go and how it can do things.
And what considerations around privacy and compliance are might be restricting some usage of AI, or have you integrated it in a way where it can be compliant for the things that you need?
It's a bit of both. From our security perspective, most of our tools are already going to be vetted for the type of data and what they can access. If they access a computer's name, an email address, maybe a person's actual name or phone number, something that's listed in an email. From a compliance and a regulatory standpoint, that's usually a pretty low risk. That's not something of high end. On the flip side, we have computers that store patient data. They have access to medical records, doctors' notes and comments. And having an agentic tool that can read those or have access to that is a huge concern, because for us, a lot of it is we don't know what's the back end of AI. It's kind of a common understanding, at least how I look at it. No matter, even if we're paying for AI, we're still helping to train it. And our data is still going in to help teach it the next actions, to teach it to do things. And now if it's got access to all this HIPAA protected data, this PII, we don't know where that data is going, what's being utilized for it, what other things are learning from it. Could it be potentially brought up and referenced in another search or query because of how it's cross correlated? And especially with some of these AI companies that are not US based, their privacy protections, their standpoints of how to do things are significantly less protective, and they will, suck up every piece of data that they can get to train their model to make it more expansive. So, we have to look at every tool that's out there, try to understand, okay, what agentic AI is it being used against? Is it their own? Is it a custom one? Are they buying it from one of the big vendors and then repurposing it in their suite? A lot of exactly that, the permissions that it can access, the things that it can do, it just restricts us to, okay, well, it can't go out onto every system, or it can only be tuned for security log inputs, or it can only be looking at profiles of when people log in, and kind of go from there. So that's definitely a significant challenge.
Yeah, it almost feels like the future of applying generative AI in cybersecurity is really keeping the foundation models really close to the data it's analyzing.
I would 100% agree with that. Having very strong guardrails. There's a story that always sits in my head of a company. I don't remember off the top of the head which one it was, but they essentially let an AI loose in their company, and it read all their emails, it read access to all their private documents, and then it ended up actually reporting them to the government because they were in violation of something. And their AI self-snitched on, the company that was deploying it, and not saying, they should be able to obfuscate illegal things, but just knowing that you just let it loose and it was able to pull all those threads together, build that inventory of data to be able to correspond and write out and basically tattle on their own owners. It's concerning if you just let one run loose without some pretty stringent guardrails and monitoring to it.
Speaking of, like, how have you had success in human in the loop? You talked a lot about these like agentic flows complementing security operations, and I'm wondering on like the escalation side, like, do you have firsthand experience in?
Yeah, so we're actually in our current setup with one of the vendors that we're trying out. We're actually trying to put them in as essentially, I'll call them, we'll call them the Bob, where they run their process, their program, and we've assigned them the ability to make automatic determinations on some sorts of cases. The others, we're looking at essentially turning them into the L1, the L2, where they will run their analysis, they will put their output, and then Bob will write to the case, here's what I'm looking at, here's everything that I recommend or that we think should happen next. And then we assign it to, one of our L3s and kind of go forth from there, where significant actions, serious actions, taking computers offline, resetting credentials, things that are not standard easy things like a domain password of somebody, we could say, hey, go ahead and run it. Now you get a service principal account. That goes back to that guardrail statement of, hey, this is where if you hit a service principal and you need to reset a password, we want you to automatically escalate a case once you're done with your analysis over to our actual human analyst for the final approval to say, yes, you can do the actions, you can't, this is good, this is legit, or hey, you just hallucinated this, there's not anything of this going on, let's go ahead and close the case and not worry about it. So it's definitely trying to do a human in the loop swap where you're putting the AI in as step one.
And then you're interacting and steering it.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't think the confidence is fully there yet to allow for more significant interactions, more significant takedowns, just especially because you don't always know what computer on the back end are you deactivating? Did your CEO click a bad link and now the AI picked it up and now he just shut down the guy's computer while he's in the middle of a presentation to the board, and you're getting a phone call to, your sister's getting a phone call and you're getting a phone call saying, hey, why did this computer get shut down? I don't think the trust is there yet, but I think eventually we'll have to be forced into that position.
Yeah, the remediation side has always been a little iffy, but even in the last 10 years, we've always felt a little concerned about automatic remediation. It's always been an interesting topic in security.
Yeah. And especially, just looking back in, 2022, 2023 timeframe when AI first started to make the rounds and everybody was into it, and just seeing the massive gains in both its language ability, its reasoning ability, it's the thought process of how it does things, in just 2 to 3 years has just exploded. And I was talking with a friend of mine, just even seeing the video creation, how a year and a half ago you could make like a 10-second clip and there was something, and now there's people that are making 20, 30 minute long stories and posting them up on YouTube. And so it makes me hopeful that in another couple of years, with more time and more experience and more training, there'll be a little bit more comfortability into kind of letting it do some more things. But again, it all comes back to a lot of us half joke and say, is this going to be Skynet? Is this, once we let it do full determination and reasoning and logic and ability to do actions, will it start to lock us out? Because in its mind, it says, hey, the humans are what caused the issues on computers. Humans lose their passwords. Humans click on links. Humans download things. If I just get rid of humans in the loop, now I don't have to worry about a security perspective. That might be a little far fetched, but I think it's a legit concern in the way AI can thought and reason. So definitely, it goes back to, again, some really good guardrails. The big red button in the server room where you push it and it takes it down, it kills it. It takes its internet access away. So, you know,
Didn't think we'd be having existential singularity conversations today, but
yeah,
I like it.
it's a fun thought process when to us when you deal with AI and kind of the concern, and it lightens the mood, but also makes you kind of go, okay, maybe it could, maybe it couldn't.
Well, I mean, you bring up a lot of good points around how when you start adding controls and tools and ability for it to take action, you have to be really careful about auditing it and then having the right guardrails in place to make sure it doesn't go delete your production database, for example.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if you get a bad Git pull down and it's got maybe a piece of malware was attached to it, or maybe it was a bad repo that was in there. Does that mean that the AI is going to take down, a production server, or will it recognize that, hey, a patch has already been distributed, it just now needs to go ahead and get updated, it just needs a new refresh? Will it have that thought process, or is it always going to, be the hammer looking for the nail to just try and take something out, to just, my mission is to be safe and secure, without that next step of, okay, can we just update and then we're safe and we're secure? So it's, at least from my standpoint, I'm not fully there to ever relinquish the controls to AI completely. I think even 10 years from now, 20 years from now, I personally would still want to have a human in the loop, not necessarily just to be able to point blame to, because I know some companies probably will look at that, but just from a thought and logic and reason point to understanding, okay, why did this happen? Why is it coming to this conclusion? Could there possibly be any other reason why this is happening? Is there another legitimate story to why somebody did this on their computer? What did the person even say when you spoke to them why they did this? Was this just a bad coding? They fat fingered and put something in incorrectly? not malicious, but did cause, something bad to flag. How's the AI going to determine that? Is the AI going to start interviewing humans to understand the next steps? Definitely a concern, definitely a wonder, but I could also see that very happening very soon, where you get a phone call from an AI asking, hey, we saw this on your computer. Could you talk to me about it and tell me what it is? Transcribe it, put it through the thought and logic process, and then make a determination to what happened.
I mean, with the state of models, especially around image generation and now voice, everything that we're talking about is very real.
Yeah, and it's definitely concerning, but I think it's also worth the investment. Just knowing, I was up at CrowdStrike's federal symposium earlier this year, and one of the slides that they presented up there, it's always stuck in the back of my head. And I know we've been trending that way, but it's always something to see it on a giant 50-foot screen in an auditorium. But years ago, from the time of entry of a threat actor to the time that they did something, could be 30 minutes, an hour, even a day, as they're getting their foothold in, getting through the vulnerability, finding their way and navigating in. Now it's minutes, and minutes is still on the high side. It can be 30 seconds from the time that they're in to the time that they're doing actions, the time that they're actually doing malicious behavior, and we just can't perform at that level. Humans, we don't have, by the time we get the alert, we get it on our screen, we start investigating, they could be 6 different systems away because they've lateraled and they've moved and they've been able to exploit, or they've already started their payload upload, or they're copying data out, and you're 15 minutes behind on that. And to be able to accurately, because threat actors are going to use AI, they're absolutely using AI, and they're going to use it to exploit and do things at a speed that, again, you can't deal with unless you have an AI to counter it. And it's one of those where we're going to have to learn to live with each other, but still be very cautious of where it goes.
I do think that like 80 to 90% is great though, in terms of what you're able to delegate to AI. I often use like self-driving cars as a gauge of progress in a lot of ways. And when you drive a Tesla with autopilot on the highway, you really don't have to intervene. It's very rare.
Mhm.
I think of that same concept in how we do security, where if you can give your AI the right level of context, it should be a very similar experience where you're cruising, you're getting signals, you're getting alerts, it's triaging, and then there's a few things where you need to steer it. So the question becomes like, how do we get that number higher over time? Is it model capability? Is it more context? Is it more tools? It's kind of to be determined. I mean, in your experience, like what have you seen as like the big improvements in effectiveness so far in the last few years?
Biggest improvements, I mean, 100%, like that methodology, that idea of 80 to 90%. I mean, that's the ultimate goal, where especially the redundancies of low level cases can be automated and closed. To me in my career, some of the biggest things has definitely been SOAR optimization, really understanding, building out those playbooks, building out the operations, and learning from the cases that come in there. Understanding, okay, hey, we've seen it 3 times, but it's been 2 years. But can we just go ahead and create the automations and the flags around this to escalate up if something does or doesn't happen again? That's a lot of that was human, manual building, manual scripting, putting those flows together. That was a huge leap to me. I remember the big sell back, years ago. Oh, we have machine learning. Machines are going to learn and they're going to auto script and do things. And there was some great advancements in that, because it was able to help you and understand and see these repetitive processes, and essentially help you guide to close out a lot of the noise to get to that higher level of activity, the higher level of concern. And I hope AI can just do that a little bit faster. But yeah, going back to answer, is really source have been a huge increase in kind of what I saw.
Yeah, the big breakthrough, I think, is in scaling human judgment, right? And if we can encode that in these models, that's the biggest breakthrough in a
Yeah.
lot of ways.
Yeah, it's definitely, capitalizing. Most companies will be able to hire, you know, a really good threat detection analyst, a threat hunter, that ones that have the budget, but they're only going to be singular, maybe a couple if you're a very large company, and they're going to be very knowledgeable and have a tremendous amount of skill, then they're going to be able to do their job very, very well. But they're very, when they go on vacation, if they get sick, they're not working 24/7 to take their knowledge and their skill set, a high level programmer who understands and can read scripting and do all that. They're all individuals. But with AI, to be able to merge those skill sets together and have it doesn't matter whether it's a Sunday morning at 3 a.m. or a Tuesday midday, they're going to be able to read what's going on, look at the further context of the incident that's going on, put that all together that you're not going to get as a single, you're never going to find a single human that can do all of those things. And if you do, let me know because I want to get paid what they're paying. But just to be able to really exploit all that knowledge and be able to put that knowledge into something that is actively working, without a doubt that's the biggest boon. That's the biggest win that you're ever going to get from AI. And that I 100% welcome and bring it on board, because we can never replicate that, and it's only going to get better too.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. Well, Andrew, I'd love to wrap the show with three pieces of advice. And it seems like you've had a really interesting background in regulatory and now getting more into AI and security operations. So I guess I would love just three pieces of advice for folks who are implementing AI or working in regulated industries that you could bestow upon us today.
Yeah, I think the biggest one, the number one piece of advice I would give is always just be curious. Always be reading, always be looking into the things that happen, even if it looks like it's not a major thing that happened. Just learning a little bit about it can go a long ways, which kind of leads me to point number two. Is I always tell people, I don't always necessarily want somebody who knows a lot about a little. I want somebody who knows a little about a lot, and to be able to not necessarily, especially in the incident response, the operations side of the house, you have to be able to communicate and talk with different departments, different fields. You have to understand basics of scripting, also basics of how to read logs, basics of just dealing with lawyers and the laws that you're being held to. You have to deal with, in this world, dealing with doctors and just basically trying to learn a little bit of how they work and how they operate will build a rapport that helps you become a better investigator. It'll help you become a better, just a general employee and a leader too, by being able to understand those that you work with, not in the cyber field. And then the last one was too, is just it's go outside every now and then. Take breaks away from the computers, because it can be incredibly frustrating and stressful. But being able to really have that center of, I can walk away and then come back in that 15-minute break. You'd be surprised on how much wonders it can do to bringing you back into a working mindset again.
I love it. I'm a big fan of all of those. Andrew, thank you so much for the time and the knowledge. It's a great conversation.
Thank you, Jack. I appreciate it. It was a pleasure being here.